Hello, Emily. It's Friday, October 23rd. If you hear background noise, it's because there's a social thing going on downstairs, which I'm taking a small break from. So, yeah, that's the noise. Sorry about that. So, we have quite a bit of serious business to cover in this video. I'm going to start with the shorter, lighter things. One, I would like to start with addressing to Amy. Amy, I thought I didn't entirely follow your argument, honestly, but I thought the fact that you were really into that, you were really engaging, you were looking things up, and so were they, and that was good thinking process. So good for you. Go, Amy. I'm not going to address the actual issue which you brought up because that's a very complicated thing. Keep doing what you're doing. Good job. Okay, now Next, antistrophes. Is that the word you were telling me about? Is that how it's said? Antistrophes? Can you explain this word to me more with examples and things? And I didn't really. I kind of understood what you were saying, but then I didn't really understand it. So can you explain that again with more examples, please? Thank you. That can be your fun fact questioning thing if you'd like, because I'm going to take your fun fact and use it as my fun fact, so we're double using fun facts, but that's okay. Lava lamps. Lava lamps is the next order of the day. So how lava lamps work is if you have two things that are insoluble, right? We'll start with that. Two things that are insoluble so they won't mix, like oil and water. Only we don't have oil and water and lava lamps. But two things are insoluble so they don't mix. So that's why you see something that's colored and something that isn't or is a different color or whatever. So you've got the two elements in there. I shouldn't say elements because that's another chemistry term and it's not just an element. But anyway, you've got the two things in there. And these two things that don't mix are about the same density. They're almost the same density. Now, density, as you probably know, determines what goes to the top and what goes to the bottom. So if they're about the same, they can't quite make up their mind which one. The one that is more dense will go to the bottom typically, and the one that is less dense, typically, it will go to the bottom, and the one that is less dense will go to the top. However, these two things are so close that their densities can be changed by heat. So what happens when you heat something up is it expands. Think of like water when you heat it up and it boils and it turns into gas, right? So you took this tiny amount of water that was, little when it was liquid, and then when you turned it into gas, it expanded immensely into a ton of space. So the same thing works on a much, much, much smaller scale with just the light bulb. So the one that is more dense, the one that is slightly more dense, because they're almost the same, so the one that is slightly more dense is at the bottom, right? And it's sitting at the bottom, and it's sitting by the light bulb, which is heating it up. Now, eventually, the light bulb heats it up so much that it expands and becomes less and less dense and less dense until eventually it is less dense than the other material that it was close before because it was at the bottom first, but the other one was only like a little bit less dense than it. And then as this one on the bottom was heated, it expanded, and then eventually it expanded so much that it was less dense than the other one, and as such, it goes up. It's not a whole lot less dense, so it's not going to just go bloop up to the top like when you pour oil and water, but it'll kind of slowly move up because it is less dense, so the physics slowly switches it over. And then the one on the bottom sits on the bottom for a little bit, and was cold because it was sitting at the top, but now it's sitting on the light. So it's heating up, expanding, and suddenly, as this one's getting more and more cold and this one's getting more and more hot, this one's becoming more dense because it's getting colder, this one's becoming less dense because it's getting warmer, and they switch densities, so they switch positions again. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if it doesn't and I can try it again. Or not, if you just don't care. But that's how that works. Science. Chemistry. Physics. Things. Go science. Okay, now to the point that I know you've been waiting for me to address. And that is your Harry Potter house. So, in approaching this question, I did two things. First, I just thought about it. Thinking about what each of the houses represents, what their qualities were, what you got initially, what you got later, how those two things could have been affected, the whole analytical process. I thought about it. And then, once I had kind of formulated an opinion on all these things, I went through and actually took the quiz for you. I feel like with our telepathic connection, I feel like I can take your opinions and whatnot and send them through my slightly more objective filter than, since it's very difficult, like, to a point where I'm not actually sure it's possible for us to be entirely objective about ourselves, because we don't know, to the point where some things somebody else might, it's much easier for somebody else to see than yourself. That's a whole other thing that's very interesting, I think. But anyway, I took the quiz for you, and my opinion and my quiz result for you agree. And the diagnosis is Ravenclaw. I am placing you in Ravenclaw. I think this is very accurate. I think that is where you should be. I would first like to discuss what you got Slytherin the first time. I feel like since you took the quiz directly after reading the books, I think that can have an influence in how you're responding to the questions, because you're still kind of hyped up from the books, if you know what I mean. You're still saturated in all the things, versus taking a step back and answering more personally, versus you are kind of you've just absorbed, like 15 different personalities from the book itself, which I think can kind of skew your results, because if you're reading, I'm not sure about this is kind of just a thought I'm just going here, but if you're reading about a character, you might potentially pick up some of those characters, especially to the point where if you take a personality type quiz, in this case the sorting quiz, it could spill back out onto that. So I think that there might have been some contamination with having just read the books, versus the latter time you took it, you were probably a little bit more objective with yourself, not quite as influenced, even subconsciously, by the books themselves. Now I'd like to address why I think it is a good fit for you, why Ravenclaw is a good fit for you. So I just addressed why I thought you might have gotten Slytherin the first time, and now Ravenclaw. I feel like your absolute fascination with all things on paper, and more, but is one of the major things that just sort of seals the deal for you. There's nowhere else for you to go when you have that much absolute love and passion for the history and the understanding, and just understanding how things work, how cultures work, how people work, how history happens, and old things, and the old buildings and the old everything, and not only that, but all the new stuff as well, all the science, and you want to understand all that. And I feel like you also really enjoy, witty jokes and all those kinds of things, and I think all that together really puts you for sure in Ravenclaw. The quiz that I took for you did give it in percentages, and you got from me from my quiz taking for you a strong 88% Ravenclaw. You got above, in between 40 and 60% for all three of the others, which I thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, I think Ravenclaw definitely is your best fit because of all those reasons, because of your passion for the history and the texts and the old buildings and all those kinds of things in particular. Now, I also took the quiz for myself, and I got Ravenclaw at 70%. I also got, I guess you can't get more than one, but I got Hufflepuff at 68%. So I think those are pretty close too. So I'm not sure one of those totally overrides the other. I'm interested in your opinion for me. If you want to take the quiz for me, I would enjoy hearing your results on that. Coincidentally, earlier today, some folks at lunch were talking about who would be in what house for Harry Potter. It was kind of amusing, and they decided that I was in Hufflepuff. They didn't actually decide anything. They just went, Hufflepuff. You're Hufflepuff, Slytherin. You know, there were a couple people that they decided would be in Slytherin, which was kind of amusing. But yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting, the discussion earlier today, because rather than like, I think a lot of outsiders might put like all vet students automatically in Ravenclaw, just because you might come across with that personality sometimes. Um, but they thought I was Hufflepuff. So that's cool. I like their I don't know what they call it, their theme, their motto, their values. That's probably the word that would be best applied. I like their values, so I'm good with that. However, the quiz did give me a 2% higher for Ravenclaw. I don't know between those two. What do you think? Do you want to take the quiz for me? That would be great. Love to hear from you. Hope the Orange Groves are treating you well, and I will see you soon.